Good morning, everyone. When I call your name, please indicate that you're present, and if you're stepping in for someone on my list, please state your name clearly for our records. California Natural Resources Agency, Secretary Crowfoot's designee, Deputy Secretary Arthur.
Present.
Thank you. Assemblymember Gallagher.
Here.
Thank you. Senator Dolly's designee, Bruce Ross.
Hello.
Thank you. Department of Water Resources, Director Namath.
Here.
Office of Emergency Services Director Ward's designee, Deputy Director Najura.
Here.
Department of Parks and Recreation, Director Quintero's designee, District Superintendent Teague.
Here.
California Highway Patrol Commander's designee, Lieutenant Patrick Leach.
Present.
City of Oroville, Mayor Pittman.
Here.
City of Oroville, Vice Mayor Smith.
Here.
Butte County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Conley.
Here.
Butte County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Kimmelshoe.
Here.
Butte County Board of Supervisors appointee, Commissioner Bateman.
Yeah.
Sutter County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Stevens. Sutter County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Boone. Yuba County Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Furr. Yuba County Board of Supervisors appointee, OES Manager Marin. Butte County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Beller.
Here.
Sutter County Sheriff's Office, Deputy Lycan. Yuba County Sheriff's Office, Operations Captain Lieberger.
Here.
All right, we have reached a quorum of 14 commissioners. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, and we'll kind of begin with some introductory remarks, and I feel like I've already kind of gone through mine, but I'm very looking forward to these presentations. They're covering items that all of us have had great interest in, and getting more information on, for instance, the water control manual update, the inspections that have been done on the dam, and hearing from the concerns of the downstream communities. So some very important topics, and looking forward to the discussion. I'll start though by turning it over to, we are very honored to have the Director of the Department of Water Resources, Carla Nemeth, with us today. And so I'll start by turning it over to Director Nemeth to make some remarks.
Thank you, Assemblyman, and good morning. I wanted to start the department's remarks on the water year. As you all are aware, October 1 starts our new water year. It's been an interesting couple of years. Really starting from our transition from 2022 bone dry to 2023 incredibly wet in parts of the state. And we continue to see situations where extended dry periods are punctuated with intense storm events. And this year coming up is looking to be no different. But our State Water Project Deputy Director, John Yarbrough, will give some key details about the status of conditions up at Oroville and the things that the department is doing to prepare as we enter into what's becoming our classic wet, dry, all-in-one season. Be prepared. So go ahead, Mr. Yarbrough. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Director Namath, and really good to be back here. It feels like it's been a while since we've all been here together in this building. So, yes, Oroville, we are right now about half over capacity. The reservoir is about a little over half full, so that's about 55% of capacity. That's right about average this time of year. So, the recent storms we've seen, that's really helpful. That's better than where we were last year. We had this really hot conditions that was drying out the watershed. Good to see some rain coming in, wettening up the watershed. But we're really looking for, are we going to get these big storms coming through that are going to build the water supply? So if we don't get those, we're going to be returning to dry conditions. If we get too many, we're going to be worried about flooding. So we're looking for that right number of large storms coming in, because again, that's we're going to get dry periods punctuated by large storms, which is where we get our water supply from. And then, really excited for today's topic. So we're going to do our, annually, we've been hitting on going through our dam safety activities. So we've got Dave Sarkeesian here to do that again, going through where we are on the many different topics that we've been following with this committee, with this commission. And then also as part of that, I want to touch on, at the last meeting, I got a good question about what is the rating, the safety rating for Oroville from DSOD, and I gave the wrong answer. So we want to dive into that a little bit further and elaborate on where the dam is, what the plan is, and what our steps are to get that back up to that top rating there. So again, really look forward to today's presentations, and good to be here with you all. So thank you.
All right, thank you, John. And Director Nemeth, did you have anything further? Yeah, go ahead.
One quick update that I wanted to provide really comes from our flood staff, and it was actually the result of some of the discussions that the commission had, I think, a meeting or two ago, and that was just an update on the Army Corps of Engineers did a one-time assessment for the city of Oroville and that levee. That happened in May of this year. The Corps completed their initial draft of the levee screening report just this past September. Earlier this month, they met with staff from the city, Sabufka, I think we're all in territory where people know what Sabufka means, Sabufka and DWR. The levee screening team will now incorporate the comments from these 3 California entities into their report and submit it for review and finalization by the Corps headquarters team. So this process from the Corps is anticipated to take several months, but one of the things I wanted to two real points. One is just thank you to all of you for helping our California entities get together, go out, do that kind of screening work together, and provide this together to the Corps for their consideration. That's a really important and powerful model when we come together as state and local governments. So that's thing one. The thing two is, to me, it also really demonstrates the value of this entity and making sure that we're organized and speaking clearly about how the system works and all of our different roles in protecting the public from flooding. So that is actually, I think, going to come up a little bit later with the water control manual as well. We're really working on this model of can we have state and local government alignment on issues. So again, just big thanks to all of you for those recommendations and to the folks who participated in that screening effort. And thanks in advance to the Corps for your responsiveness to California's concerns.
Thank you, Director Nemeth. And I also just want to take a moment for any commissioners that maybe want to have some introductory remarks, if anybody had something they wanted to say or bring up at the outset of the meeting. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I want to kind of highlight your remarks about the Army Corps. I got a chance to participate with that, and they had 3 days here and went through every detail, even measuring the mole hole depths in the levee. So I appreciate the detail the Army Corps did, and of course all the Department of Water Resource staff that assisted that. It was, it's funny to sit in a room when you got 12 engineers all are having a discussion about something and try to get agreement. Was a very interesting process, to say the least. But we have reviewed the draft document, and I encourage anyone downstream of us that if you don't have something done by the Army Corps, reach out to them. As simple as just getting our levee properly named. It had a numerical name, and we'd never heard of that before, so we now call it the Oroville Levee 1. So it's an interesting addition, but it was certainly a positive process, and it will help us down the line to reach the 200-year flood protection level, which is a big deal for our community, as many parts of the community are subject to the high flows. So I appreciate this body, and I totally agree with you that this body was a kind of seed planted to get to that point, and very valuable. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Pittman. Any other commissioners? Yeah, Vice Mayor Eric Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, and I just echo those sentiments as well. We're super appreciative of all the help when it comes to public safety. The year was 2015, and Oroville was a recipient from USA Today and Destination America, a fireworks show. And it was an amazing time. There was a lot of excitement and hope, here in Oroville. And it seems like just a lot of struggle. And up there were two cities that were awarded that particular event. One in Waveland that was impacted by Katrina, and then Oroville back in 2015. And so just a little test of appetite. I've had a lot of inquiry from the public. I've had some encouraging networking with Explorer Butte County to help sponsor a 2050 celebration, a fireworks celebration, once again from the dam top. And I just think that it would be an opportunity to once again kind of turn our focus to dealing with the challenges of impacts from tragedy to something that we can all come together and celebrate. So I just want to throw that here before this body this morning and kind of digest that. And I think it's appropriate to kind of start here, given that we're talking about launching explosives from the dam top. Some might take exception to that, but I just appreciate the thought, the opportunity, and something to celebrate, which is, in these days, it seems like a rare opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Other comment? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to make one comment for the group, an update on our process to produce a tri-annual Oroville Dam Citizens Advisory Committee report. I think, as you all know, we talked about this at our last meeting. This is required of the legislation that created this body, SB 955. So just a quick update for the group on the timing of that process. So we shared an outline with commissioners back in June and July, talked about it at our last meeting, and solicited feedback from our committee that's helping guide the report. We'll be sharing a partial draft, so our plan is to do an introduction and one section in mid-November, and we'll share that with the commissioners here for feedback and input. And we'll ask for your comments in early December, and I'll be happy to follow up by email with you all with this time frame so folks can remember it. And then we expect to do a full report draft in early February and ask for your feedback at that time. And I also want to mention that we welcome, SB 955 lays out the specific parameters of this report, but we welcome additional comments from commissioners, and you can produce those broader comments about where the commission's made progress, areas of improvement, and we'll take those comments and add them to the report in the appendix section. So I just want to provide that update, and I'll follow up by email with the dates with you all.
So just to clarify on that, will there be some additional time for people to provide input?
Absolutely. So we're going to do it in two steps. We're going to do an intro and a section, ask for input on that. Then we're going to do a full draft and ask for input on that.
Yeah, and the full draft will be in February.
Exactly.
Right, but between now and then.
Yeah, now and
We'll be
then
taking
we got the input on the outline, and now we're producing that first draft. People can be working on those comments that they want us to attach at any time now. And then once we have that first draft of a section, we'll ask for folks' reaction and input on that, and we'll convene our committee that's been guiding this.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Any other commissioner? Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
I'm not trying to burden, but anyway, I just remembered that these were passed out at the front table, and I better explain myself. If you were here when we dedicated the Oroville Dam with Ronald Reagan, his comments were each county donated a locally sourced rock specimen mounted to the engraved metal nameplate and set into the concrete recesses of the Oroville Dam roadway barrier. Together, these panels symbolize the concept every county played a role in the water system that serves us all. That was Ronald Reagan's comments about the panels. Well, the original panels had some problems with contamination, and they properly were taken down for public safety. But now we have a new idea, and Director Nemeth has one of the samples that is an idea for a public art project, and it's just an idea at this point. We did the same thing in Oroville on the wall above the Thermalito Bridge. There's 60 panels that were done by 2,000 students, in our schools here in Butte County, and they all have some, where they actually put a tile in the thin set, and they're pretty durable. The idea here would be to put these panels on the blank spaces on the top of the dam and symbolize all of California as a huge public art project. So it's just an idea today, and it's more a request. Do you like the idea? I will say that everyone should get an opportunity to contribute to these panels. It would be a real nice, I think, beautification, and the possibility of connecting with all the schools in the state would be a real neat idea. And this is just an idea. We were very successful here in Oroville, and it goes back to the history of, every county contributed something, even though the something shouldn't be up there anymore because the rock had asbestos in it and whatnot. So just throwing the idea out there, and we'll see that I gave the one panel to Director Nemeth, so it'd be decoration in her office. All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, why don't you tell the folks where they can see those on display now with the Rainforest Project?
Well, if you drive across the Thermalito Bridge, there's a walkway and a block wall, and there's 60 panels that are applied to that wall. There's only about 10 or 15 left, but it's been a multi-year project, and then each one of the panels has a QR code at the bottom, and if you wanted to donate to that panel, then your name and everything is identified on that panel. So the likelihood of we could have schools that actually have their contribution identified. The original panels had a nameplate that had the county, but those nameplates are gone, and this is just kind of could be a huge public art project. And I will say that this entire project for the city of Oroville is grant funded. So we would, go down that path. We're not looking for anybody to open their wallets today, but it's just an idea that could tie and be a nice unification project for the entire state. Thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So we'll continue to explore that, and thank you for presenting that idea to us today. Any other commissioners wanting to make opening comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll start getting into our meeting agenda. First, I do want to say the meeting planning team would like to remind everybody that after the June meeting, you received an updated action item tracker. This is a document that we've been utilizing to show different issues and whether or not they've been resolved or continuing. So they'll do the same after this meeting today, give you an updated action item tracker, and are asking members to provide any suggested corrections in preparation for our next meeting. With that, it's time for our presentations, and the first one we have is David Sarkeesian with the State Water Projects. He's our manager of dam safety services, so he's returned to the commission today to provide his regular update on Oroville Dam's safety program. So, Mr. Sarkeesian.
Yep, good morning. Thank you for the invitation to return and provide you with an update on our progress. So today, I've kind of got three major topics, and thank you for the feedback from the commissioners on what you'd like to see. So I'm going to cover condition assessment ratings, and with a focus on the emergency spillway erodibility study that we wrapped up in May. Flood control outlet projects and activities. Of course, a lot of work on the spillways. And then the Director's Safety Review Board and FERC Part 12D safety inspections. So starting with condition assessment ratings, our two regulators, FERC and DSOD, assign condition assessment ratings, as well as the hazard potential classifications, and each do it independently. FERC's ratings ultimately are adopted and posted on the National Inventory of Dams database, which is the graphic in the top right there. The database that's, I believe, hosted by the Corps, and you can search up a dam, find out its rating. Our current rating is fair from both agencies, and our understanding in talking with DSOD, that rating is in large part about our ongoing work and questions on emergency spillways' ability to pass the probable maximum flood without experiencing excessive erosion that could create the stability issues and concerns with the monoliths at the top. And so in talking to FERC, that's one of the items on their mind as well that puts us at fair, but there's also a number of other studies that we've submitted and topics that we're working on, some of which I'll touch upon today, that also play into the fair rating. The definitions are there on the bottom right, and so for fair, No existing dam safety deficiencies are recognized for normal operating conditions, but there are rare or extreme hydrologic and or seismic events that may result in a dam safety deficiency. And so a lot of the work we've been working on are those topics, with the new understanding of seismicity and flood loadings, reevaluating our facilities and getting those studies into the regulators, letting them digest them, review them, and come back with their comments or concurrence on our studies. And so in terms of the emergency spillway, we've been working on this erodibility study the past couple of years. We really believe this is a state-of-the-art analysis. We utilize one of the consultants that really specializes in this type of work. We're unique in that we have the 2017 incident, right? The large erosion incident in the main spillway as well as on the emergency spillway. And that provided us a lot of data by which we could really evaluate and establish our erodibility parameters. Most dams don't have that. They have not had that kind of incident where they can really get some hard data on the different types of rock that are at their dam or on their spillway. The second component that's unique is that we consider the time rate of scour rather than just infinite flow at a peak discharge. And a lot of the early analysis we did, even for the emergency spillway as the design was occurring in the 2017-2018 timeframe, we were using infinite flow, and that's a lot easier to model rather than the actual hydrograph of the flow passing over the emergency spillway where it starts out small and then there's a peak and then it recedes. And so this analysis considers the fact that it's not constant flow at a peak level, it's an actual hydrograph that changes over time. We evaluated 2 cross sections. Those were located in those 2 kind of gullies that were created in the roller compacted apron. And we also considered the 5 scenarios you see there in the table. Scenario 1, about 90,000 CFS over the emergency spillway. That's about a 2,000 year event. And then the 3,000 year, the 10,000 year, up to the probable maximum flood, which has 419,800 CFS over the emergency spillway. And then we also looked at the Arc storm. That's a longer storm. I believe it's a 30-day storm with a smaller peak. And you can see there 50,000 CFS over the emergency spillway, but it's a much longer storm. That's maybe 25, 30 days versus a 3-day storm, which are the more typical scenarios that we're looking at for scenarios 1 through 4. Here's a couple screenshots from the report. And so they took a lot of geologic data that we had and classified the rock. You can see starting with intensely weathered would be orange, and then we've got some shear material as well. And then yellow being moderately weathered, green slightly weathered, and that light blue as the fresh rock. And also in those profiles, you can see the secant pile wall that was drilled at the downstream end of that apron, and they took those piles pretty much down to refusal, to where they were making no progress with their drilling. And then also the RCC apron, and then at the top, the actual RCC buttress portion. The black lines represent all the different scour profiles that were modeled and all the different iterations that were done. And right off the bat, you can see that these are not going into really the slightly weathered rock in green for any of the different outflows. The main conclusions, the probabilistic results indicate the likelihood of spillway discharges undermining the secant pile wall or the RCC apron and causing head cut progression towards the spillway crest is improbable. So none of these runs demonstrated that level of damage or erosion. No modeled hydrograph scenarios up to and including the PMF for either the main or secondary drainage resulted in simulated scour propagating upstream of the spillway or secant pile wall. And so this analysis, obviously very positive results in terms of the predicted performance of the facility. And this is the kind of study that our regulators are waiting to see from us, demonstrate how it's going to perform. And so we filed this, I believe it was in May, June timeframe, and we're looking forward to their review comments.
David, just
yes.
maybe real quick, maybe just to explain, what is the difference there when you're looking at, slightly weathered rock versus moderately? What does that mean?
Yeah, so
in simple terms.
Yeah, how weathered is the rock? Is it hard and fresh and dense, or is it weathered and kind of soil-like? And so there's kind of a spectrum of weathering that the geologists interpreted and then was built into the model.
Right, and but I mean, as I recall, the issue that we had in 2017 was that it was going into, it actually did scour the slightly weathered rock. Is that right?
I don't think so. I'd have to go back and look, but again, the fact that we had all that data from 2017 to see how things performed under a real situation, a real live scour event, informs this study better than any erodibility study out there. And so we've got a really high level of confidence in these results. The one thing I will point out, you can see the black lines downstream of the secant pile wall. There will be erosion. There will be erosion downstream of that wall. And that is a question I'm still looking to get the volumes so we can estimate what do these eroded volumes look like, what are the impacts, what are the consequences of that sort of event where we have erosion downstream of the secant pile wall.
And then does it show scour, I'm just not totally seeing that, does it show scour of the moderately weathered rock?
It does. It's so the yellow, it's kind of looks like these surfaces are right at that yellow to green boundary.
And so that's where it's showing you would have scouring under that study, but it doesn't go into the slightly
green.
Weathered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the study also, each of these weathering profiles or categories, there is a range of parameters they were given. And these analyses kind of look at the high, the low, the median. And so a lot of we call it like parametric analysis is considered, where we're using the range of expected performance of each horizon and modeling that again and again and again to get to these kind of results.
We were really concerned, does it go under the concrete?
Exactly, yeah. So and this study really answers the dam safety question that I want answered, that our regulators want answered. Are we going to have undermining below the secant pile wall? And so you look there, the secant pile wall is down into the green, kind of terminating at the top of the blue. And so it does a great job telling us that, hey, we think we're in good shape here. The secant pile should remain intact under these flows.
Yeah, go ahead,
So
Mr. Ross.
You talked about there would be scour, and you're going to have, if I heard you right, you're going to be continuing to study what that would look like and model that.
Yeah.
I mean, so could you have a situation where you might have scour that looks as alarming as what you saw in 2017, but you would have confidence in the underlying structure?
Exactly, yeah. And I'm going to try and get to volumes, for each of these different events. What is that eroded volume amount? And what is that in terms of consequences to the department, to environmental consequences, et cetera? And part of that kind of segues into the next slide. So we've submitted this report, but we're not stopping there. We've submitted to our regulators an issue evaluation study plan, which identifies a number of other what I call feeder studies we need to have in our hands to conduct the quantitative risk analysis on this very topic of emergency spillway erodibility and the potential for head cutting to the monoliths. And so we recognize this is a study that gives us positive information about this performance, but we still got to do this step with our regulators and go through this analysis and with the goal of getting to the same consensus conclusion that what we have out there is sufficient in terms of dam safety. Some of those feeder studies, the Oroville Dam stochastic flood event analysis should finish in December. That's a big one for a lot of our studies coming up. We need that information. The radial gate reliability study also completing this December. Our plan is to have that quantitative risk analysis workshop in July of 26 and then complete the report in December of 26. And again, we're following the FERC risk-informed decision-making processes. We've also adopted those, made our little tweaks, for our dam safety program to walk these kind of issues through that process to reach decisions on these big topics. If we were to do something here in the emergency spillway, it'd probably be a big project. We want to make sure that we've validated that this is a risk that needs, a big action and investment to resolve. Again, our goal, reach consensus with our regulators on the emergency spillway's performance and the need for any action or improvements beyond what we have there today. Just as a highlight, I think I've maybe shared this in the past, this is our dam safety risk process, a little bit simplified, but has the main components. Starting in the center are the routine dam safety activities, our surveillance and monitoring, our routine inspections, our 5-year independent reviews from external consultants, and then level 2 periodic risk analyses like what was done for Oroville in the 2020 timeframe. When we do these activities, if we see what we term as a potential dam safety issue, and we've got a definition for that, they're typically these big items, big issues that are not simple maintenance things that we can go address. We look at those, we evaluate them, and come to an issue validation decision document where we make a decision, or do we need to do an issue evaluation study and go through this process with the quantitative risk analysis, or can we address it some other way, or should it just be a routine dam safety activity that we pursue? We go through that issue evaluation study stage, and the question in that stage is really, is the risk high enough to justify an action, a risk reduction action? If the answer is yes, we go to the corrective action alternative study stage. If it's no, we just return that to dam safety activities. And again, we document that decision so that people that come behind us can understand what were we thinking, why did we advance this project, or why did we not advance this project? In that corrective action alternative study stage, we look at all the different alternatives that could be implemented to resolve or reduce the risk. That could be operational, that could be obviously an infrastructure change. And in doing that, we also get a measure of what is the risk reduction we achieve, and what's the most effective and efficient way to reduce the risk. We then select the best alternative, document that in the decision document, and advance it to the design and construction stage. And so we've got a number of big topics like this, not just at Oroville, but our other dams, where we're putting them through this process so we can understand the top risks across the portfolio, document our decisions, make sure we've got the case, for these big investments, and demonstrate that to ourselves we're making the best decisions we can, and also to our regulators, of course.
A quick question.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
How many other places have a secant wall?
Oh, gosh.
Is that a new
Yeah.
idea, or is it something that's been applied lately? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't have a number off the top of my head, but it's a common, I think, measure that dam owners might take where there's an erosion issue. You want to try and cut it off, get down to good rock. They're used, in levees as well, but maybe it's more like a cement bentonite mix to cut off seepage. But it's a common geotechnical solution.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so some other activities that are flood control outlet related. We're in year 3 of our spillway maintenance contract. In fact, they started work, I think, 2-3 weeks ago. First thing we do is have them clean the spillway, and then our inspection team comes right behind them and identifies the areas that need to be addressed. And so this year, it's largely joint seal repairs and some minor concrete repairs, kind of expected maintenance that, through the use of the spillway, that we'd expect to see. We've also got the radial gate standby generator project that was approved by FERC, and that hails back to the comprehensive needs assessment measure T3BH2, includes a new generator and a whole slew of equipment for gate operations and improvements for connecting temporary generator to the system as well. And so we're looking to, I think, advertise that early next year and get into construction, completing ideally in 2028. With respect to the gates themselves, the gates are subject to full open exercises every year. And when we do that, we're taking measurements of the power draw to monitor for any binding or friction or unusual performance. Back in 2017, we had a consultant come out and do hoist rope magnetic particle testing, and they looked good, no wire breaks. In 2022, we had our 10-year structural, mechanical, and electrical inspection. The gates were found suitable for continued operation. We always get recommendations. A lot of them are focused on maintenance or changing up our monitoring. They did take a look at the wire ropes at that point in time as well, with no evidence of advanced wear. And then the inflatable seals, these are the side seals that when the gates are closed and the lake is elevated, they're designed to be inflated and apply pressure against the walls, the concrete walls, and cut off the seepage that might pass by the gate. And so we've had some pressure issues. They're pressurized at this point by a water line, but that's really, when they're a lot ahead, it's hard to counter that reservoir pressure and get a good seal. And so when you see water in the spillway when the gates are closed, it's that side seal seepage. And so we've got a project initiating in '26, at least with some design, to see how we can improve either the repressurize them better, or if need be, take a look at some different solutions and to get a better seal for those gates. But I know that comes up quite a bit, the seepage that's observed, and it's those side seals on the sides of the gates that are just not sealing and pressurized as much as we'd want to get a good seal. And so non-destructive examinations, another annual item we do. You might recall the gates are tied to the structure with high-strength steel tension anchor rods embedded within the piers. Those rods are also grouted, so they're surrounded by grout. And so adding them or doing any sort of additional rods is really basically infeasible. You can see how they curve there, and they're really tightly spaced. And so at this point in time, we've been doing, and for the past years, NDE methods to evaluate their condition. And so we do that through ultrasonic testing. We do that annually, looking for any cracking or corrosion in the vicinity of the grip nut at the top end of the anchor. And then we've also partnered with the Army Corps. They come out periodically and have a guided wave method that's basically sending a wave down the rod and watching it bounce back. And when they do that, they see that reflection, then they can make the conclusion the rod's intact, right? There's not a crack at depth. And so through that testing, we have not seen any significant anomalies. Our latest structural analysis indicate we do have significant redundancy in the number of rods at this point, including for the seismic loading. But all that being said, we recognize these have a service life, right? Just like anything. And so we are continuing to look and study alternatives for structural support. Or that you might recall in the CNA, there were some alternatives or measures of a new gated spillway, upstream of this one, or adding new gates to this structure somehow. And so we're still studying that, and that's something that, ultimately may be the solution for aging anchor rods. And it's really not a unique problem. A lot of gates are supported through these type of anchor rods. And a lot of owners are out there testing, trying to understand their condition and thinking about the future. Yeah.
Yeah, David, on the seals for the gates, is the primary concern for the leakage just basically storage retention, or are there other impacts to the facilities from that leakage?
It's storage retention. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. More projects. Our radial gate reliability study. So again, this should complete the end of this year. And this focused on the electrical, mechanical, and control equipment. And we took a look at the historical performance, our maintenance and inspection practices, and remaining service life of these components. And that's all going to help us inform the need to maintain or replace components that are critical to gate operations, and then refine our maintenance and inspection practices. But this will also be a key input to all of these risk analyses that I'll speak about today and in the future, because the likelihood of the gates operating on demand is a big question as we look at these risks. Where we rely on the gates, we need to know what is that probability that they're going to operate on demand as we need them. And so this, again, will help assess that and, again, guide future maintenance. Radial gate seismic retrofits. And so another project we have in design phase. The scope of this is strengthening various gate components based on our analyses, being the skin plate, that face of the gate basically, and that blue vertical ribs, the red elements that are on the back side of that skin plate, and then the upper horizontal girder, that horizontal beam there, and as well as coating repairs and trunnion pin inspections, and a number of other maintenance items that we've been looking to get to that we'll throw into this contract. And so about 3 years of design anticipated, and then you can see the construction phase is quite lengthy. I've planned this out. We've got 8 gates. We may not be able to get on each one, if we've got a high lake through most of the summer, et cetera. And so at this point, we're thinking it'll be done in about 9 years of construction, but very much dependent on water levels and dependent on other activities. We have other projects out there like the hoist replacements, and so we'll need to integrate all this work and make sure that we're not having conflicts with multiple contractors on the site, and then also balancing the desire to get this work done with the need to make the gates operational, come fall. Okay, and then Pier 10, this is the crack, you might recall in 2017, that was painted red, that drew a lot of attention. And it was painted red at that point, really, to catch our inspectors' eyes, to remind us, okay, there's a crack there. It also helped us, monitor for growth over time. If we saw the crack extend beyond the paint, we go, okay, it's grown a little bit. That paint was about 2 to 4 inches wide, and the inspections really showed that the crack was only 0.04 inches, so pretty much a fine crack. In 2018, we had a structural engineer perform an inspection and evaluate it. Crack originates at a reentrant corner at that arrow up there, at a notch in the pier wall for the roadway bridge, so not too unusual to see a crack extending from a location like that. It extends down in the upstream direction at about 45 degrees for about 12 feet, and again, measured as 0.04 inches wide, so that's a fine crack by Corps' criteria. The assessment determined it's non-structural in nature. It was caused by tensile stress concentrations at that reentrant corner as a result of concrete shrinkage following construction. We did have seen historically, before we grouted it at least, minor seepage, and that was fed by a surface drainage adjacent and external to Pier 10, which had kind of ponded concentrated water. That was a source, so we got that corrected. And then all the other cracks in the FCO also considered non-structural and fine, 0.04 inches or less. And so in 2019, it was sealed, and you can see that is actually epoxy, kind of roughed in there. And so that's a surface application, but they also injected epoxy, and they have these little ports that they'll inject into the crack and try and get it to go into the crack and not come back out of the crack as they're doing this work. And so that surface application kind of helps seal it and to try and accomplish that effort. We're looking at this annually, and we haven't seen any notable changes. All right, our flood control outlet piezometers. And so I've reported on these in the past. We have 4 that are under the FCO monoliths themselves, the gated monoliths, and then we have a whole series down the spillway, upper, middle, and lower is what we call them. And so we have not seen high groundwater pressures during spill releases, nor the high reservoir condition for the vast majority of these. We do have B162, which is located at Pier 1 at the edge of the monoliths up there. We do see that respond to rain and sustained lake levels, but still within a reasonable range. And so the data really holistically is showing high quality foundation and concrete bedrock contact and a lack of uplift pressures, which is obviously what we want to see. And so we've, as the graph depicts, we look at this data and we think about where's the lake at? How about the rain? Did the rain create a change? Did the spill release create a change to the instrumentation or groundwater pressures? And so we're looking at all these parameters as we evaluate the data year after year. I see a question maybe coming, maybe not. No? Okay.
No, not me.
All right. Moving on to the monoliths 25 and 26 seismic retrofits timeline. I've had this slide in the past. You might recall in that first time frame, we were in the midst of our analyses, a lot of modeling, submitted results to the regulators. The next 5 years or so, we're looking at the piezometer data, making sure it aligns with how we modeled it. We also plan to do a quantitative risk analysis on this topic with the regulators, and then ultimately identify the most effective and efficient combination of risk treatments to the existing monoliths as needed. We plan on getting that plan submitted and then workshops in 2027. And then on the far right, the outcomes. If feasible and risk reduction sufficient, initiate a retrofit design and permitting, focusing on the existing monoliths that we can retrofit those. If not feasible, then we would be looking at that new headwork structure that's been kind of a topic coming out of the CNA. And so we still need to get through this process to get to that big decision if that ends up being an appropriate path. But I put the note there. I don't see us going that direction, but I want the process to play out. I've also planned in our strategic planning, design and construction phases out there in the future in the event we end up going that direction. And so that's a big part of what our planning is, really trying to make sure we capture potential things that occur that may be needed. And then as we learn more, we can revise that plan and remove those projects as appropriate. All right, I think this is the last topic, our 5-year boards. So under California Water Code, we have a Director of Safety Review Board, and that's a 5-year cycle. And then under the FERC guidelines, we have a Part 12D safety inspection. And so we retain consultants through RFQ processes. When we do that, we've got a review process with both regulator that they find that the consultants we're bringing on are appropriate, have the right expertise. Our last Director of Safety Review Board was in December of 23, and that's again with DSOD. And then in January of 24, shortly thereafter, we had the Part 12D periodic inspection with FERC. We do leverage the same team of consultants for both processes because there's just so much information. We want them, we want to get some efficiency out of it, and so we give them all of our documentation. We go through the inspection process with DSOD, and then we go through another inspection, and they're out here a second time, with FERC and ourselves again, inspecting a second time and going through the Part 12 process, which in the comprehensive assessment process is much more rigorous. Reports finalized in May of 24, and then our Part 12 periodic inspection reports were finalized in a little bit later, July 24. And really the headline conclusion the consultants gave us is that the dams were found safe for continued use and reservoir impoundment.
I do have a question
Okay.
when you're done.
Okay. Well, maybe this will help. Maybe I'll get through this and then we'll see. So the next cycle for Oroville, Parish Camp, Bidwell, and Diversion Dam will be a Part 12 comprehensive assessment. So this is the more rigorous process. This includes the PFMA, the Level 2 risk analysis. The scope of work for these independent consultants is not just the visual inspection, but review the engineering analyses on record and agree or disagree or give us recommendations to improve those or update those. Look at all of our dam safety instrumentation data and performance. Comment on our progress on previous recommendations. You review our public safety program, review our owner's dam safety program. And it's a very lengthy guideline that they have to follow. It ends up being a very comprehensive, very large report that these teams put together. So moving forward, we'll be late 2027 putting together that independent consultant team to do this work for us. In 28, perform the inspections and have the workshops. And then July 29 is our deadline to report to FERC with the final products. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So-
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, so this year, the golden mussel just, been significantly impact the recreation. And I do appreciate DWR's kind of forward thinking, learning lessons from Folsom as to how to best move folks along so that they can get to what they want to do, which is have a good time on the lake. That being said, to kind of quantify a potential new hazard, because there's obviously a lot of focus and concern. Southern California has had, as I read, a lot more impact from this particular invasive new species to our area. What would that pose to infrastructure as a potential new hazard, and what kind of thoughts have been put into mitigating that hopefully it doesn't get into our lake, but if it did, how would it affect this infrastructure, and then how would that be mitigated?
Yeah, I think the biggest threat, in my opinion, are the small diameter pipes within the plants. Because if they get in there and they start growing, they can clog those small diameter pipes. And in the plants, they're like cooling water for the units, our fire systems, fire sprinkler systems, things like that. And so that's, I think the department, first and foremost, is looking to protect small diameter pipes, the majority of which are in the plants. And we've been spending a lot of energy looking at solutions to that with ultraviolet lights and things like that can kill the larvae and strainers and all sorts of things with a focus on the plants. Anything that's big, like the radial gates, I don't think they're a problem. We're going to be able to open those gates. It'll be more maintenance. We may be up there scraping, more mussels off the gates and other things over time. But really, the vulnerability are those small diameter pipes, to my knowledge. But I'm no expert, and so hopefully that answers the question,
Yeah,
though, at this
thank you.
point.
Yeah,
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Supervisor.
Yeah, David, great report, very technical, especially for a guy like me to follow, but I appreciate it. I guess my question is, our goal is to get from fair to satisfactory, is that right?
That's right.
And by doing all this work, we feel that that will happen eventually, is that right?
Yeah.
And when do you think that might take place?
I've been thinking about that myself.
Okay.
It's going to be years, because it takes us 2 years to get through one of these studies. It takes 2 years to hear back from regulators or both regulators and get consensus and say, okay, you've answered the questions, we're good. A lot of times, one study ends up, creating a need for the next study, and so I think it's a matter of years. Yeah, but we're aggressively moving on multiple fronts, as you can see with the different projects we have going, to try and get all these addressed to the degree we can in parallel.
And then I noticed in the definitions, it talks about seismic situations. Is that something that is a concern, where the dam is located, and can we ever overcome that to get to the fair level?
I think we can. I think we can overcome it. Obviously, this is far less seismically active than Southern California. We've got much larger ground motions we're dealing with on those dams. Here, the past 5 to 10 years, we've done a lot of work on updating our analyses for new loading conditions based on current understanding of seismicity. We've got a very rigorous analysis on the dam itself that should also get issued here soon in the next couple months, which is another one that I think the regulators want to see. They want to see a new analysis, state-of-the-art, considering today's ground motions, and see how the dam performs. And from what I've seen, the draft reports, we see great performance. That being said, we may still take that topic, even though we got a report that says, oh, great performance from a deterministic standard base. We'll probably still take that to risk and go through that process and evaluate the risk associated with those results.
Okay, and then one last question, and this may be kind of a stupid question, but this was built with 1960s technology, this dam, the gates, the infrastructure, everything. What is something that could be, what's a big project that could happen to bring it up to more today's standards, I guess? Or is that just something you're continually working on?
We're always considering changes in the loading, whether it's seismic or hydrology. I think the work on the FCO is a good example of where we know we can do some retrofits to the gates and improve them, seismic resiliency. Then it's the gated monoliths themselves. I think we've got some retrofits there to do that'll shake out. And I think that'll be on the existing monoliths. I think the driver for us to do something upstream with new gates is really more the longer term aging, just the service life of the facility, and having that redundancy upstream of the existing radial gates is kind of maybe more of an aging infrastructure type decision that drives us to do something like that.
Great. Well, I appreciate the work you're doing, because like Supervisor Connolly always said, we've got the bathtub in our backyard, and which supplies water to the rest of the state. But obviously, if there was ever a catastrophe, we're the area that would be affected the most. So thank you for your continued work.
Commissioner Bateman, I see you've been upgraded to supervisor, but Commissioner Bateman, go ahead.
I wouldn't want that job. You've shown that the emergency spillway is unlikely to back up. Is there any concern about the deposits it will make in the diversion pool?
And that gets to the study I mentioned that I need to get going here, is estimate those volumes. Based on these different scenarios we've run, different amount of erosion, what are the volumes for those different storms?
And so you're going to look at that?
Yeah, we're going to look at that, yeah.
That seems pretty important.
Yeah, and we kind of categorize those as non-life loss consequences. First and foremost, we want public safety. We want to avoid any life loss where we can. These erosion events, in my mind, are probably, non-life loss environmental issues down in the diversion pool and things like that we need to consider and, inform any decision-making about taking more action or not.
Thank you.
I have a comment. Basically, I want to reiterate what you said and make sure I heard it right. The emergency spillway would only be used in like a 900-year event.
I didn't state in a recurrence interval. At this point, it's probably more in that 200 to 500 year based on the information we have now.
Okay, so that's what's going to bring us where we want to go locally. We know when you use emergency spillway, we're going to be underwater. I mean, at least part of our town, and if not a lot of our county, and then downstream. So I think that what we really want to emphasize locally is that flood control manual and make sure that it's adapted in a way that gives us 500-year protection as was promised back in 1970, so that you never have to use that emergency spillway, because that is the name of it. It's not an auxiliary, it's an emergency. And I want to remind you that it was built to erode away and to save the dam. And now you've improved that to where it won't erode away and save the dam, but it will go down the hill and erode away and save the dam. That's all it's changed, right? Correct?
Yeah.
And then the next thing is, I want to point out that when they built the dam, they didn't make a maintenance manual for it. They didn't think ahead. They didn't give you the redundancy you're talking about. They didn't think 50, 75, 100 years ahead to where you're going to have to put a different set of gates in to be able to take these out and rebuild it. And I think looking forward for public safety, I'll be way long gone. Well, I plan to live 100 years, but we should be looking at developing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we go, design these projects, we're trying to have that mindset about the people that come behind us. What can we do to make their lives easier and their ability to maintain the structure?
And I'd like to compliment you on the improvements that have been made in dam safety. I mean, to be honest, before it failed, then you fixed it, and now it looks like you're trying to prevent that. So there is a different culture, and I really appreciate that. I look forward to talking about the flood control manual, because I think that ties into everything.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. So
Thank you.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Any other questions? I had a couple. Well, go ahead, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Real quick, it's really kind of a question and a comment, because when this thing was dedicated that day of, the expectation was for the lake to take 2 to 3 years to fill. It didn't happen to fill the first winter. So what we now have is something we've learned about, and I appreciate all your efforts here. Now we're going down a path because we have experience, we have events, we have real solid knowledge about making this a better project. And frankly, that's what happened back when this thing came about. And I can remember the day of, they said, it's going to take 2 to 3 years to fill, and that just wasn't real. So now we have real good data, and I appreciate all your efforts in the room, especially making it a safer thing, and for all of us down the line. Certainly, some people would criticize way back when, but way back when, it was said it's going to take 2 years to fill, so they didn't worry about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to mention that because I'm the gray-haired guy in the room that remembers all that stuff. So thank you. Appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, so I was just going to do maybe some quick questions. So one, your determination after this review is that the dam's in a safe condition, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And FERC agrees with that assessment?
I'd say FERC has it fair, so they're looking for us to address some items, but I think if you ask them and they responded, they'd say, yes, it's safe. Otherwise, they'd be making us, restrict the reservoir or something.
And their biggest thing was the emergency spillway?
I think that's the biggest, but there's other
Erosion.
studies that are in their queue that they're also looking to review and either agree or provide us comments on. And so I think it'll be a little longer to get to satisfactory with FERC.
Right. Okay. And that's ongoing.
That's ongoing,
Okay.
yeah.
And on the spillway, the main flood control spillway, I'm trying to recall, were drains put into the new spillway?
Yeah, under drains, yep.
And so, as you recall, that was a big issue with,
Yeah.
that they weren't working properly in the old structure. Your determination reviewed the drains are working properly and there's no issues that were observed?
Those are part of our, what we call our dam safety surveillance and monitoring plan, is to watch those drains, especially during spillway flows and rain events, and see, do we see flow or not? And so we've been able to see that when it's a sunny day, we haven't had rain, but we're using the spillway, we see virtually nothing coming out of those under drains, which tells us, okay, good, water's not getting through our invert, our chute, right? And then we see when it does rain, we get a lot of rain, and some of that rain does come behind the spillway walls and gets down into the foundation. And so we just do see a little bit of water, and we're able to correlate it to the rain, that it's like we're seeing water, and yeah, it rained last night. And so we've got engineers and technicians watching for that kind of behavior and comparing it against where's the lake at? Are we spilling? Did it rain? To draw correlations and understand how things are performing.
And then the other review is the piezometers to ensure that there's not observed water pressure
Exactly.
underneath the spillway structure.
Exactly. That's the function.
And that showed no evidence of that occurring.
Yeah, correct. For those spillway chute piezometers, very little reaction to any of those rain or lake or spillway.
Okay. And then on the gates, I mean, it sounds like, you know, there are some issues there that you guys are reviewing, including the anchor rods, the crack in the pier. But the determination there was that there was no structural deficiency.
Correct.
In those gates. Is that right?
Correct.
But it sounds like what you're looking at, as you said, it's at some point it meets the end of its service life. And so the options there are a completely new headwork structure, headgate structure, or a retrofitted structure.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
And right now you believe that it's looking more like it would be a retrofit of the existing structure as opposed to a new headgate structure.
I think so. In the near term, I'd say, yeah, a retrofit to the existing structure, but at some point in time, you know, the anchor rod condition is going to get to a point where a decision will need to be made about, okay, is now the time to do something upstream and add a new set of gates and a new set of bays. And that would be the most practical, I think, approach, since considering this is a facility that needs to stay in operation, right, each winter.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's needs to be a really strong consideration, just because, you know, I think one of the issues is that we have old infrastructure that needs to be replaced, and so concern of the community, I think, would be like really looking at, you know, when do we need to start in earnest looking at that. And then lastly, like, you know, a lot of these are the things that we have observed and we expect. We're looking at the things that we expect to happen. I think one of the things that came out of the analysis afterwards is we need to make sure we're looking at things that maybe we don't expect are happening. And I just was going to ask you, like, is there anything maybe that came up in the inspection or that you were looking at as, hey, what are things that maybe we aren't looking at that we should be looking at?
Yeah, we try and go through that process in that potential failure mode analysis workshop process where participants are able to brainstorm, you know, issues that might occur, and are they valid concerns? Is there evidence to show that failure mode may progress or may occur? And then there's a whole screening process with that group in that workshop to filter it down to the things that really, hey, these things are really valid concerns. Let's focus on those. Let's estimate the risk associated with those, and as appropriate, you know, evaluate or develop risk reduction measures for those. And so I think that's one way to address, I think, your comment. Another thing that we do is that when we do get an anomalous reading or observation, that gets reported. It gets reported to myself, to field division staff, and we investigate. And typically, after that investigation, we come to an understanding of this is not a dam safety issue or concern. We understand why we got this anomalous reading, and we can just keep on monitoring and stay within that box that I had on that one figure in the routine dam safety activities world.
Okay. And then, I mean, another issue that has come up in the past, the green spot on the dam surface. Any inspection of that or any readings from?
Nothing unusual. I mean, it's going to show up each year. You know, we understand why it appears. It's because there's some horizons of compacted fill in there that have more fines, and so when the water percolates down, they perch and they kind of feed out to the face and keep that area fed with water, so it keeps growing later in the season than relative
I recall
to the other.
that was the determination of where it's
Yeah.
not through seepage.
Yep.
And then FERC will be reviewing that review as well.
Yeah, we've got a number of analyses also evaluating that condition, that it's wet, is at a softer spot that's less stable, and so we've got analyses documenting that it still meets required factors of safety. Even so, of course, every annual inspection, we're looking at that, we're walking it, we're checking it out.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
I might ask a question about the canal that Feather River South Feather Water and Power has to go there. I know there was some work done. Is that all completed and done that goes through the mountain of the dam?
Oh, one of their tunnels?
The tunnel that.
Oh, you're talking about, well, Palermo, that's our
Palermo
facility.
ditch, yeah.
So the Palermo tunnel, the department installed that to continue providing water right after the
Right.
dam was built. The work we did last January was relining the canal portion, and so that was also something that came out of the comprehensive needs assessment as a risk
Right.
reduction measure. So we got that done last January. So I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's all I'm
Okay.
talking about. I just want to make sure that all got done and there was
Yeah.
no hiccups or problems with that process.
Yeah, no, it actually went really smooth, yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sarkisian, and appreciate your presentation. All right, so next we do have Scott Turnquist with DWR's Oroville Field Division to provide an update on Oroville's budget and project prioritization.
Okay, thank you. I'll do my best to streamline this. There's a lot of details on a lot of these slides, so I'm going to kind of go through fast, and if there's questions, certainly stop me. My name is Scott Turnquist again, Field Division Manager in Oroville. I'm responsible for managing the operations and maintenance of the program area of Oroville Field Division. You all are very familiar with the infrastructure that we have there in the Oroville Thermalito Complex shown. We also do work up in the Upper Feather River. We have 3 dams and reservoirs that we own, operate, and maintain up there. We maintain about 30 precipitation monitoring sites that are spread throughout the upper watershed, as well as snow surveys up there. So I have staff that are up in the Upper Feather. I have a couple slides here getting into details of the O&M activities, and I'm gonna kind of graze over this because there's a lot of details, but certainly if there are questions, I'm happy to answer. This slide is showing the left side is our O&M details, and the right is more of the support functions for that core O&M activity that we do. I'll point out preventative maintenance there right at the top, and condition assessment. These are part of our typical maintenance management, asset management processes within the field division. The right column, I have 7 branches. 3 of them are dedicated to operations and maintenance specifically, and the rest are support services to those core O&M. So we have a lot of stuff that goes on additional to that O&M function. Everything from engineering support to we have a warehouse that we manage and maintain PPEs and nuts and bolts and spare parts, so we can provide that real-time maintenance. This next slide is, again, drilling into a lot of specifics in the O&M activities. The left column there is really centered on our plants, and the right is looking at activities that are specific to our dam assets. I've bolded or I've made blue those activities that are specific to dam safety. And that's going to be our annual routine inspections with the regulators. We have, my staff do the routine surveillance and monitoring that Dave was mentioning, collecting data on the instrumentation and just observing the facilities, watching for performance reporting anomalies, that type of stuff. There are also some maintenance type activities in there too, vegetation maintenance and debris removal in the reservoir and that type of stuff. Switching gears from, and probably the meat and potatoes of this are the last 2 slides where I'm going to talk about our budget, the numbers, and then also talk about the actual projects that we're executing on. When it comes to our State Water Project capital prioritization process, we have a defined process, methodical, where we go through, projects are identified, risk is evaluated on every project, we estimate our resources, those projects are then prioritized. The output of this process is a work plan for next year, and then a multi-year capital plan. That's very important for me. It's something that I am held accountable to, and that I can hold project managers and those that the project managers are resourcing accountable to as well. The evaluate risk portion in the middle is an important part too, and I'll get to that more in more detail in a couple slides. Drilling into the prioritization a little bit more, because I know that's an important aspect here that folks want to know. How do we determine what projects are brought forward and what projects we put money towards? The State Water Project in Oroville has many more projects that we could accomplish in any given year. So we use our asset management principles to prioritize the work. We assess the risk, and we identify the resources. Our process is methodical. It's consistent with throughout the State Water Project, and ultimately we're trying to do the right work at the right time with the right resources. One prominent aspect of that prioritization is the risk analysis, risk assessment. I know the Commission has seen this matrix before, and I just wanted to double click on it. It's an important, really important aspect of the prioritization. It's, again, a consistent process that we have. Every project has to have a risk, a pre and post project risk analysis. Drilling in to the consequence criteria, because I think that's important. You see here the consequence categories. Public safety has the last three, the largest three consequence by numbers. And in the next 3, 6, 7, and 8, it's only shared with 1, 2, or 3 other consequence categories. So it's what this shows us is that any project that has a public safety consequence is going to be driven up in risk, is going to have a higher risk score. So when I'm evaluating the projects in my portfolio, I see those projects drive to the top, and they're prioritized higher. Another thing that we use in our evaluation is this concept of mitigated risk. This is kind of looking at maybe a hypothetical project where you've got a pre-project risk and a post-project risk, and that mitigated risk, that delta there. And so I can look at, I can take all my projects, I could stack them up and look at basically the dollar spent per risk buy down. And we're looking for value there. So if there are projects that may be on the same level, I can use this as a metrics to apply more dollars to buy down more risk. So last couple slides here. This is our field division expenditures. A few things to point out. So you see the annual O&M costs. This is 21 through 26. 21 through 24 are the actuals. We're mostly through 25, so I have a pretty good picture where I'm going to end up in 25. There's the capital projects include the dam safety services projects, so those that Dave Sarkisian had already mentioned that are in Oroville are going to be included in this. There's some things that I wanted to point out. You can see in 23 and then to 24 in our annual, there's a big blip there, and then drop back down in 25. That really is attributed to, I had a bunch of outstanding invoices from contractors that over those few years I've been dealing with trying to get caught up. And so 24, we got through a whole bunch of those. We have a few more in 25, but that's my annual budget's typically going to be in that $50 to $60 million range. And so it's going to vary. It's going to fluctuate every year. There's a lot of inputs into why that fluctuates. I'll point out a couple that tend to be out of my control. If we have an emergency, a fire emergency, flood emergency, that's going to drive up. The other thing is just good water years. So when we have above average water years, I'm going to have also a corresponding increase in budget in that year. And I guess, one of the important things to point out here is that I have flexibility when I need to get more money. When we have a good water year and I'm going to need to have more expenditures, I have the ability to go back and get revised budget as needed throughout the year. The capital projects, you can see that also is going to vary quite a bit. That typically is going to vary a lot more because it really is dependent on those projects that are brought forward and what hits as far as prioritization. 23, you see a big jump. 24 goes back down to almost 30, a little less than 30. That has to do with mostly the RVOS project. I had the RVOS project in my fund center in 23. The river valve outlet system project, and I think has the commission had a presentation on the river valve? Okay, very important project, very high dollar project that we have going on, the low level outlet in the base of the dam. And so that project, I think at the time it had maybe $100 million budget, something like that. It was in my fund center, it moved out. I also had some bridges in there too. We have 3 bridges that we're working on seismic retrofits to upgrade them and hand them off to Caltrans to get them out of our portfolio. And those projects impacted my 21, 22, 23. We moved those out. So that's why you're going to see that big drop there. 25, we're back up to about 40 million. And so last slide here, these are, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but these are all of the projects that are currently in flight in Oroville Field Division. This includes my fund center for capital projects, and it also includes the dam safety services, so those that Mr. Sarkisian covered and some others that he didn't cover related to dam safety. I have those bolded that are specific to dam safety, and Dave hit on a couple of those. I think important to point out here is, so most of these are multi-year projects, so that's why this obviously isn't going to add up to my budget for 2025. Some of these could be 10-year projects. And really there's a lot going on, so I wanted to hit home that there's a significant improvement in the infrastructure in Oroville that's ongoing. It's been ongoing, and it'll continue to progress in the future. So that is all I had. I know I kind of went through there really fast trying to keep time going, so willing to answer questions if there are any.
Any questions from commissioners? Yeah, Mr. Ross.
This is possibly a naive question, but just briefly, as somebody who doesn't manage a dam, I tend to think it's there in a dry year or a wet year, but how do your expenditures or costs go up in a wet year?
Well, so good question. Everything from road to ditch maintenance. So we're managing not just the dam, but a whole bunch of assets and infrastructure. So when we get a lot of water, we end up having more ditches, more roads to clean, more debris on the lake. Even the units are moving more because we're passing more water through the system. So we'll have to have more reliability outages and stuff breaking down more. So it's an interesting deal, but it definitely is real. I can kind of look at the big water years that we have, and if we have really big water years, it really does tend to kind of really spike in those years.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from commissioners? Yes, Mr. Bateman.
In terms of risk assessment, do you include the costs borne of evacuations incurred by the communities? We don't get any recommends from that, and it is a big item. With the 2017's variously estimated 10 million or 50 million. And does that go into your cost-benefit analysis when you're looking at projects?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do have that component of cost, public impact for sure, built into that safety, that matrix there. So I couldn't.
At that level, because that's most of your maintenance budget 1 year.
Right. Yeah, these projects, when we're evaluating risk for the project, we're looking at the project before we do the work, the state, and then after. And there is going to be risk in both cases, and there's going to be some potential if we don't do that project and we have a failure. And that is taken into account in that matrix. They're pretty gross numbers. They're big blocks of a dollar amount.
They're gross enough.
I mean, I think, Commissioner Bateman, that's a question that's at the federal level too, in terms of approaches to FEMA, and does FEMA actually, when they think about risk and they think about mitigation, because it's cheaper in the long run, right, to mitigate than on the back end have to deal with it, which is also not your whole point, safety is the point, but that's part of the point. How do we think about that? And I think that even at the national level, one of the things the department is doing is advocating for any kind of FEMA mitigation strategies to include exactly what you're saying, because it is a lost cost, and it's something that we have to be mindful of because it's real for people, and it ought to affect our thinking and our prioritization. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just one real quick question. Do you feel like you have sufficient budget to keep on the tasks that you've identified that need to get done? That's
a good question. Yeah, I do generally feel like I have a good budget. I feel like I have the benefit of coming in after the spillway, and there's a lot of attention on Oroville Dam. If I have issues, especially relative to dam safety, I can elevate, and I feel like I have pretty superb support on that. So yeah, I do feel like I have adequate budget.
Okay, well, certainly let us know, and that's a thing that we can advocate for if there is a need for that as well. So,
Yeah, and along those same lines, are these dollars secure? I mean, can someone go into the budget and take these, some of these dollars and fill holes somewhere else in the budget of California? Or are these secure?
They're secure,
Okay.
yeah.
okay. Well, thank you for the presentation. I was going to maybe go a little bit out of turn here because I do want to make sure that the folks that wanted to talk about the downstream concerns have the opportunity. So I think we'll go to item 5 here first, and then we'll go to the water control manual update. So Supervisor Connolly, I think you were going to head up that part of the presentation.
Yeah, I think, with all due respect to everybody, I think we only get a couple hours to do our work here. I think if it's not on the agenda, we should put that last instead of, we wasted 20 minutes earlier that cut into what could be a very important perspective by the federal side of us here. Okay, so I want to talk about, in 1970, they promised us like a 500-year flood protection here at the dam. And we realize now, I mean, as citizens, and I want to give Matt Mentek and Robert Bateman a lot of credit for all the hard work they've done and looking at what we actually can pass through the town of Oroville, be about 150,000 cubic feet per second. And that would prevent localized flooding and probably needs to be used by other downstream communities to protect themselves. And what we'd like to see on the flood control manual is like that promise made, 500-year flood control protection. And you know, with climate change, no matter who you blame it on, the atmospheric storms are going to be larger and they're going to be more frequent. They've been about every 10 years in the past. But with the hydrograph showing a drawdown to 835 feet, it doesn't provide even a 200-year flood control protection. And so we think that we know, looking at it, and if you want to look at this, the proof is in here. It's DWR's facts and figures that Matt Mentek's put together that you can look at. We know that we would need to start about 860, and then that would probably give you a better chance to draw us down to about 813, the base of the spillway gates. This would give us more room for those more frequent scenarios where we get warm rain on snow. And I know that we're going to go to climate forecast operations, but it's pretty new. If you think about it, when they did a presentation, they've been flying out over the Pacific less than a decade. And if you look at how they've been studying hurricanes, it's probably been 40 or 50 years. And they haven't been exactly on the mark. If you think, you know, I mean, the last year they would miss by 6 or 8 hours and miss the projections on the rain. So we want to urge you to be very aware that we should be conservative in our use of this modern science, which we will agree that you may be able to take up more of the flood pool in a dry scenario, but we want you to be cautious and put our public safety first. And we think that means that regulations should be initially based on conservative margins of errors, because the accuracies of these forecasts need to be monitored for a longer length of time. Kind of repeating myself. And remember, there is a cost for evacuations. I mean, you know, we don't even have to get into the extreme of 180,000 people. If we just have to evacuate Oroville, which we've done in the past, it's very expensive for the local community, and that is part of public safety. So we would like this to be posted to the OCAC website, and we'd really like you to understand that we're trying to be good partners, but the reality is you're under constant pressure for water delivery. All of DWR is, and they have very, very established political power, and we understand that, but we're kind of like, it's David and Goliath. We want you really to take seriously a scientifically proven method of giving us 500-year flood protection, and we really sincerely ask for your consideration for that, and that's our perspective. Fair enough?
Fair enough, yeah.
All right.
So,
Director Nemeth?
yeah, thank you for that, and thank you to everyone who put this together. I got it this morning. I want to confirm that in terms of the numbers in the forecast-informed reservoir operations study, the department doesn't come to it saying there's an automatic 833-foot constraint. So there is flexibility there that we would anticipate operating to. And right now, I think one of the things we're working on is, what is the range of operations in the context of forecast-informed reservoir operations that then the Corps of Engineers in its own process is going to examine. And together, I think our goal remains the same, is to get as aligned as we can with folks at the local level about how we think about public safety. And there are, I think, lots of ways that we look at a forecasted extreme storm, in particular, the curve of the hydrograph, what's coming in. And so I think there's more to discuss. And I think the goal of the department is, again, to be as aligned with you all as we can, so that when we provide comments to the Corps' process, we have that alignment. And I think that work is ongoing. I think there's more work, I think, to be done between the department and this group to understand what that means and understand what might inform an ultimate recommendation. So I would say input received by me, and is part of what we're going to consider and discuss as a department moving forward. And presumably not having the benefit of the Corps' update, I don't know exactly where you are in your process, but we want to make sure the processes align so that we have an opportunity to communicate with the Corps.
So it was very linear before. There was a chart, you went by it, and now we're trying to modernize that, and I agree. But let me give you a quote. If I follow a flood control manual and I flood you, it's not my fault. That's a DWR employee who told me that once. So you have to understand, I understand the cooperative nature of how we're getting along now. We need to change that.
Agreed.
And that's a cultural change that, I'm just a guy doing a job. I'm not here to beat on people, but we have to change that attitude that public protection is number one. I mean, we gave up so much. The best salmon run in the western United States, presidents used to come here to fish, a beautiful canyon that you could whitewater in. We gave up so much for a promise of this protection that it's so very important that the Army Corps knows that we're together on providing that margin of safety. And that's why we're giving you numbers that we think that will work. And so I look forward to a cooperative move forward so that we don't get quotes like, if I flood you and I follow the manual, I'm not in trouble, Does that make sense?
That
and I
makes sense to
appreciate
me,
you
yeah.
too, Carla. I think you're a breath of fresh air. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that does make sense to me.
James?
Yeah, Commissioner Bateman.
We ended up learning that the Faro project to be limited by the state water project, we understood, to using 833, I think it was, as the lowest level they did investigations. We've also understand that the DWR has done investigations of the forecasts and how you could handle it, with the lower level being the bottom of the gates, which I think is 813. And that one, we understand, does give a 500-year protection. And so I'm really encouraged by what you say, but are we then to assume that the State Water Project won't put constraints on the Corps, who have told us that basically they're not going to change the flood pool, and that's what we're talking about.
Yep.
And even the flood pool concept, as you say, is probably, and Bill had said, is probably outdated, and we should be working on a variable initial reservoir starting point, and depending on the forecasts and the time of year. And there's no reason, I don't think, why water supply should be seriously affected.
Right.
And we need, if it is going to be, well, there are two things. First, we'd like the hydrograph so we can look at it, of the going down to 8, the bottom of the gates. And secondly, we'd like to be sure that there aren't constraints put on the water control manual about the bottom level.
Yeah, I think we can do that, and we can talk as a staff about the next time that we can get together and get into those details. One of the things that I think, just as a threshold understanding of the forecast-informed reservoir operation approach on Oroville, is it is a lot less about water supply. That's just the function of this system. So in other places, this forecast-informed reservoir operations does have a significant water supply effect, like Mendocino, which was the most recent one in the news. Down in Southern California, in Orange County, Prado Dam has a real potential for water supply benefits. It's very modest up here. I think it's 10 to 20,000 acre feet. So it's not a significant driver when we think about the value of forecast-informed reservoir operations here. So know that going in. I think that is not the perception necessarily of the State Water Project writ large, for lots of important reasons over lots of history. But I do want to just make sure we're kind of level setting that in this case, even if we hear about forecast-informed reservoir operations in other places producing this yield, that's great for those other places, but that's actually not the hydrology here, and it's not how that sort of shakes out in this area. And this water control manual, there's so much interaction between how we're working Oroville in conjunction with our colleagues down on the Yuba and New Bullards Bar. So this is a massively flood-prone area of the state, and so these big infrastructure projects and their ability to work together to limit that, especially with climate, is a significant consideration. It's not going to be the whole picture, which is probably, Assemblyman, something that you and I can talk about just writ large in terms of flood protection for the state and this part of the state. And we've got a lot of good information. There's a investment that does need to be made to address the issues that Supervisor Connolly and Commissioner Bateman are raising.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think maybe just to summarize this, and I think it's important we get into the update on the water control manual, and we can have questions during that as well. But I think to summarize, there's always been a very strong, well, I don't think it's just a perception, I think it's just reality, that not enough water is released ahead of major water events that we can see are coming, and now we have better technology to see are coming. And so I think the concern is that in this new update that there would be a greater ability and flexibility to lower that level when we see that coming, and to try and keep the releases at the spillway at 150,000 CFS. Is that a good summary of what the goal, I think, of the community would be from a flood control?
Also, I think with technology advances from what I've read and been told, when you can use ground penetrating radar and you know how much runoff you're going to get, how much the snow is going, will actually turn to water and not be absorbed. That'll be an important part of it. And you'll still, to me, snow is like water in a bank, right? And the way we operate now with this water, the index, it doesn't consider the snow, and we need that change going forward. But yeah, I think we're in agreement, you know, that safety first, you'll get your water delivery too.
Okay, well, why don't we go into our next agenda item number 4, which would be the manual update. And I believe for that item, we have Jenny Fromm from Department of Water Resources is going to give us, from the Army Corps of Engineers is going to be giving us that update. So,
and we got to give her kudos, you know, they're all cut off of funding. And here she is. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank y'all so much for having me. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to be here until late last week, so I actually don't have any slides. I was going to just talk briefly about current status and what the next steps are. I did also get a copy of that report this morning, so I'm going to take a look at that as well. And then, based on the discussion we've had today, as well as any other additional questions, if I need to do an additional briefing to go into more details about other things, you just let me know and I will be here, pending funding, obviously. So real quick, again, I have no slides. My name is Jenny Fromm. I'm the chief of the water management section for the Sacramento district. And I'm also the technical lead on the New Bullards Bar and Oroville water control manual updates. Currently, for the last couple of months since I spoke to you last in March, we've been working on acquiring a new contract because we're getting engineering and environmental support to finish out the water control manual updates so we can start the NEPA process and officially kick off, we're getting this manual written. The next steps are going to be that official kickoff. We're hoping to have the initial scoping meeting in early 2026. I am looking for a place to hold that, preferably in the Marysville area, just to make it where folks from up here as well as from the Yuba can be more in a centralized area. So if you have an idea on where I could hold that meeting, please let me know. We're still on track for having both water control manuals completed by mid-2027. After we do the initial scoping meeting in early 2026, approximately 6 months later, we will have a NEPA document for Oroville, a NEPA document for New Bullards Bar, a water control manual draft format for New Bullards Bar, and a water control manual draft format for Oroville. And during that time, when you receive that information, which will be hosted on our public website, you'll have, depending on the type of NEPA analysis we're doing, also keep in mind I'm not a NEPA professional, so if you have NEPA questions, I will try to answer them or I'll write them down. Depending on the type of NEPA analysis we're doing, it will dictate the period for public comment. So if it's an environmental assessment, that'll be 30 days. And if it's an environmental impact assessment, it'll be 45 days. So then we'll address public comments, we'll get everything situated, and then probably 6 months later, we'll start the formal review process from a core perspective of getting the water control manual reviewed. Y'all will be involved in that entire process. If you have questions, you're welcome to reach out and ask them. If you go back to the March presentation I gave, there is a slide that has a QR code. That QR code will link to our public website, which will start to become more populated as we get more along in this process. And at the bottom of that, it also has an email address that goes to myself, my project manager, my environmental lead, and my public affairs office. And so with that, unless y'all have any questions, that's all I have today.
Well, thank you for being here.
Questions from commissioners or comments?
The last control manual was written when?
I get confused. New Bullards Bar in Oroville, one's 1972 and the other's 1970. 70 for Oroville, and so 72 for New Bullards Bar.
So what do you see as the biggest issue? It's climate change and these new storms coming through. Is that one of the biggest issues that you're facing in the new manual?
Yes, and technology's changed. We do get data faster. In the 97 event, my team well, my team, I wasn't there. My team, my predecessors, they had to do like 24-hour shifts because, you'd have to call and be like, what's the gauge say, et cetera. Now we pretty much get gauge data in real time. The forecast ability has improved, even though it's not perfect, we all know that. But so there's that, as well as we have new regulations for what should go in a water control manual too, so it's time to update it. We are required to look at them every 10 years to see if they do need updated. However, we're often limited if we get appropriations or not, which we have for this right now. We have 17 water control manuals we're working on at Sacramento District right now. One just recently got finished, so technically now it's 16. Isabella, due to their construction efforts where they raised the dam and the spillway, finished a couple weeks ago.
And so you have basically 50-plus years worth of data for what the watershed will do.
Right.
And so that should help you.
Yeah, it should, yes.
Okay,
Adding to that period of record, correct.
So the flexibility of the climate forecast, are you going to help us lean towards safety and be conservative?
We'll have to walk through that together and figure out what your specific questions are, and then we'll get them
Well, that's
answered.
why we're trying to get in front
Yeah.
of it. We want our
I appreciate that.
input before the NEPA
Right.
document, because then it's hard to change anything in reality.
So I have the report, I'm going to read it, and then I think I have some additional items in my inbox. Maybe it's the same report too that I got told from today. My inbox is a nightmare. That's why it goes to 4 people, to make sure that we all see it. And then if I have follow-up questions, I'll let y'all know. And if y'all have follow-up questions, please reach out.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And just one thing to always remember, I'm kind of preaching here, is that those of us that represent people from Northern California believe this is flood protection first, water delivery second.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
If I could make a quick suggestion, if it's possible, people who know the website better than I do, if folks are interested in technology-driven folks more than me, is it possible to extract the QR code from the previous presentation so we can put it in a more prominent place if people want to refresh themselves about sort of what this is, timelines, what's doing what? Maybe
Yeah,
if we
that'd
could
be
just
good.
get it right there.
We'll send it out by email.
Oh, perfect.
afterwards and make sure
Okay.
everyone gets that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think
Wonderful.
that'd be good. Maybe we
Thank
can
you.
somehow put that in a more, front and center place where people can access it and review that. The scoping hearing that you're talking about, that'll be another opportunity for the community to give input.
Yes, yes. So at that meeting, and again, I'm not a NEPA professional, but I did talk to my NEPA person yesterday. We'll be talking about, hey, we're updating the water control manual, which you already knew, but that'll be the formal process where we officially kick it off. Then we'll also talk about what we think we want the new water control plan to look like. And then that'll be the opportunity to hear the comments from everyone else. What are your concerns? What do you think works? Where are you seeing issues downstream or upstream, et cetera? So we want to know every piece of information that you have that would help inform us make the best water control plan possible.
Do you, generally speaking, when we do these updates and we're doing it based on forecasts, based operations, do you generally see that those end up providing for, more releases in advance of a major water event using the new technology that we're?
That is one way to incorporate FURO, is doing pre-releases prior to that. In the past, because the Corps only has authorization and ability to say, here's the release in the flood control space, regardless of the project, even Corps projects. But if a project owner saw something coming and wanted to do a pre-release, as long as we were informed, we're sounds good. But doing pre-releases prior to events is a form of incorporating forecast-informed reservoir operations. As well as maybe if you have that additional space you can store on top of the flood space prior to the event, similar to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lake Mendocino and how they're operating. They basically are allowed to store approximately 11,500 acre feet into their flood space, and then when they see an event coming, they dump that water, for lack of a better word, and then get down to the initial top of conservation, let the event happen, and then when they come back down, they're allowed to store that additional 11,500 acre feet. So that's one way to do it.
Right, and I think the director kind of addressed that, in that particular project, there's maybe more of a benefit from water supply
Correct.
standpoint.
Mhm.
And is it correct to say that this one, we already see that it's not really a benefit to water supply necessarily, or minimal, that the more of the focus of this will be on flood control?
Yes, and we'll specifically look at those water supply impacts when we start doing the NEPA analysis. So the Furo pilot project, they didn't look at that period of record for water supply because they knew that we were going to do that with the water control manual update.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
Okay, so next we have our item number 6, I believe, the OCAC meeting 21 agenda slide. I think what we're looking for here on this portion of the agenda is if there's anybody that has any other proposed topics we want to have for future meetings. One I know out there is relicensing as one of the things, and then pending availability of the City of Oroville levy screening project. But I don't know if there was any commissioners that had other topics they wanted to maybe look at. Those are obviously two very important ones.
Can we keep the water control manual on until it's finalized on every agenda?
I think I'm okay with that. I mean, unless commissioners have any objection to that, just like a continued update on where we're at with the manual update, so we can continue to keep that on the agenda.
It's probably the most important thing we're working through right now.
Agreed. So we'll make sure that continues to be an agenda item. And I think you also asked that the report be on the OTAC, incorporated into the OTAC, is that right?
Yeah, whatever.
Is there any, I don't know, is there any objection to that from the commission?
Which report?
The report that they presented today.
Okay. I'll just say, speaking to that, I think when it was really helpful that you guys provided that letter ahead of time, and we could include that kind of as a substitute for slides, like meeting materials, and then any submission of letter or summary that you want to do, I think we can distribute that. And not, yeah, exactly. Did you send this via email as well?
Did I what?
Send this via email?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, I sent it to David, and he was.
You sent the letter
and
via
copied,
email. So we'll
copied you on his.
We'll talk more afterwards, but I think
Okay.
any submission you have of comment letters or summaries, we can distribute.
I'd just like to say that Matt Mentig was instrumental in making that a sensible document. And James also involved Matt Mentig previously, and that's all been very constructive. Thank you.
The one other thing I'll mention, back to that triennial report that I talked about earlier, is that's a place where we'll have an appendix with a log of communications, so we can attach documents there if folks submit them.
Okay. All right, well, now we'll move to public comment. So anyone wanting to make public comment on the agenda today, please go ahead and go up to the mic. As was mentioned, Mr. Mentic, thank you for being here, as always, and please go ahead, sir.
Disappointing I don't see my Sutter County commissioners here, but looks like I've got a couple of minutes to speak on their behalf. I appreciate the acknowledgement of the report that we took hundreds of hours to put together, between reading 3 big FIRO reports, their conclusions, and their appendixes. And Carla, your recognition that you're willing to be flexible in the size of the FIRO space is very important to maintaining flood safety in the communities below. We had a meeting on September 4th with a small group of staffers, but it was not in their area of expertise. They promised to try and put together a meeting with Molly White and her operational team. I think Jennifer expressed hope that she could also attend that. And I think with the hundreds of hours put in, I would be the downstream subject matter expert, along with the people who very eloquently today expressed the concerns that we've been facing. And I think that meeting needs to be in time before the water control manual gets too far down the road. We don't want the train to leave the station before we do this. We should not silo our thoughts and our plans, but it should be a joint effort between the parties that are affected by this. And I'm sensing that that will happen sooner rather than later. It will be a technical workshop. What I'm seeing is that due to the contractual agreements when the dam was built, that there was only 750,000 acre-feet of flood storage. It was said that without Marysville Dam, that another 150,000 would be added. That was in the form of surcharge in the auxiliary spillway. Later, after the spillway incident, it was added to 900 acre-feet. And I don't know that the Corps can regulate you to go deeper than that. I think their authorization stops there, but we're going to have to drop down to elevation 318, as Mr. Bateman and 813, thank you, a little dyslexic, says. But there's other ways that we can do that. We can do it by using the decision support system, which is NEC reservoir simulation rule stacks. That is part of Plan 4. We can look at the risk curve that says you throw out the worst 25% when you're 10 days out, and you don't have to satisfy all of the scenarios when you're 5 days out. There's a lot of options that we could look at if we sit down together and give it the due time that it deserves. So I look forward to hearing more on when that meeting will occur.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mentic. And certainly I think, and I'll let the director speak, but I think we can arrange to have that meeting before, maybe before they do the scoping. Is that kind of what we're maybe looking for to have? And, I've worked with Matt many years. I find him to be one of the most knowledgeable citizens on these issues. He has put a lot of time and effort into looking at all the hydrology and what went into these projects. So very much appreciate your input, and so certainly we want to provide that opportunity to have that discussion and get more down the weeds in the technical. So I think we can arrange to do that, but I'll turn it over to the director.
Yeah, I think our goal can be to have that meeting in advance of the scoping meeting, which could be in January. So I use the word goal just simply because, people get wrapped in the holidays pretty quickly. But what's important to me is that we have that meeting. So there'll be a scoping meeting, and then there's the comment period, right? So so long as we can have this meeting in advance of the close of a comment period and potentially leave ourselves time for more than one meeting, I think would be the objective. And if I understood correctly, the report from Ms. Fromm, that scoping, what's the federal scoping period? January, February-ish. Okay. So I got to look at that QR code. I understand the point that you're making, and what I want to do is endeavor to have the meeting before the scoping comment period closes.
Yeah. Oh, I understand your question.
Yeah.
Approximately like 6 months later.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought I heard you say. So yes. So my point is, let's see if we can potentially sneak something in before the holidays, but they're upon us. But the reality is, we have the Q1 of next year to do a lot of work on this topic together.
Before a plan is selected?
The plan will not be selected until NEPA documentation is finalized, so that's a year plus from now.
Not approved, but selected that the NEPA is based upon.
We're going to look at multiple scenarios.
They do all to an equal level of detail in NEPA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's encouraging. I think all the downstream commissioners will be thankful for that too. Let me take just another 90 seconds here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, to say that the work that David Sarkeesian's team is doing is outstanding. The presentations that he's supplying us is good. He, too, is heading into a 3-year process, just like the fire report did. The fire report was flawed because it did not try to maintain the water control manual agreement of 1 in 500-year protection. It took a set elevation and said, what incremental water or flood improvements you can give me if I only stay at 900,000 acre-feet of storage. We were flawed from the beginning. He's heading into the 2029 Part 12 report, FERC Part 12, which will also be a Level 2 risk analysis. And they're going to do it on outdated probable maximum flood control. A probable maximum flood that didn't use Atlas 12 hydrology like they should have, although DWR was a part of developing it. It's using hydrology from HR 59, which goes way back. It didn't include maximum probable snow melt, which it should have. That and alone will probably be a 15% increase to the probable maximum flood. We're going to take all these independent consultants, run them through the Part 12 inspection, the risk analysis, and we won't have new outdated. The reason is that the Precipitation Act was passed 3 or 4 years ago, in which everybody's supposed to do a new probable maximum flood every 10 years. NOAA's working on what that process looks like, and right now the department is saying, let's wait and see what NOAA says. It's not going to happen before we go through this next inspection. After this inspection, 2029, we won't get another one for 10 years because it's a 5-year inspection. One 5-year section is done like on the After Bay and the Saddle Dams. The other one's done on the main. So if we don't get a new probable maximum flood before 2029, actually the studies are starting soon, then we won't see it again until 2039. And I beg you to get with NOAA, say, give me what guidelines you have to do my probable maximum flood. I've got a major study coming up, and run one. Invest the money to run your best guess on what NOAA's going to ask of you in time for these new inspections.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And do you have a comment to that, Director?
Thank you. I'm not familiar with all the details you just expressed to me, so I do want to talk to my team, and we can certainly get back to you in writing shortly. My reaction is you used a lot of terminology. I'm not tracking that closely, the Atlas piece and all of that, so I just want to make sure I understand more fully the information you just described to me before I respond. But we are endeavoring to align all of our processes. I think you're raising good points around the interrelationship of a control manual with other things we need to do relative to safety under FERC and how all those things feed into one another. Those are all the right points to be raising.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting at, Matt, is you want to make sure that as we go into this process that we're planning for using the best information, what the probable maximum flood would be, right? And not using outdated information.
And that was FERC's comment when they were delivered the 2018, is that they did not use Atlas. They questionable that they even had the space to pass the freeboarding. We're nip and tuck right now with an outdated program that once we increase it, most likely it's going to cause some infrastructure improvement requirements. And those infrastructure improvement requirements most likely would also benefit the water control manual. We need to look at this logistically, where you put all the requirements together. How do you pass the future probable maximum flood? What's that going to do to the water control manual? What's that going to do to dam safety? And instead, we seem to get this regulation behind us, get that inspection behind us, that we're just trying to stay in front of the regulations rather than being the leader. Maybe my belief is out of whack because I grew up in the corporate world. In corporate, where you have competition and the customers is your gauge of success. You got to be innovative, you got to be visionary, and you got to act fast and be agile. And we're not seeing that. There's been great improvements in organizational behavior. You have an opportunity to really tell the public you mean it by getting ahead of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And again, I think this is stuff that we can discuss, further in that meeting. That would also include Molly White.
Yeah.
And then Jenny, I'm assuming you're good with me on that as well. Okay. So just wanted to confirm that. Okay. Any other public comment? Well, I'll bring it back to the board here in a second. I just want to make sure there is none. Okay. Supervisor.
Yeah, real quickly, in about a year, we're going to lose a lot of our institutional knowledge on this commission. Assemblyman Gallagher, unfortunately, will be leaving us. We don't know about Director Nemeth or Secretary Crowfoot. My concern is, how do we bring the new leadership up to speed on all the many things that we have talked about? What's the continuity plan, if there is a plan? So just something to think about, because we have discussed a lot of very important items over the last 5 to 6 years that I've been on this committee, this commission. And so I just want you to think about that. Obviously, the DWR staff is marvelous and will also bring us up to speed, as will your staff as well. So just something to think about. Just that's my concern.
A very good point. Certainly I think that's something we can start discussing, is how do we maybe transition some of those things. And a lot of that's the work that this commission needs to continue to do. I mean, I think as long as this commission continues to meet, and I don't see any reason why it would not. I helped pass the legislation that did that. As long as we're getting together and continuing this work, I think that will happen. But it's a very important point to figure out, how do we make sure that we're staying on the same page as we change out people on this commission. Yeah.
Maybe we could include that as an agenda item for meeting 22.
Yeah, we could look at that. Like, how do we have a transition plan? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Matt, let me just finish up. Is there another comment? Yeah.
Mine's real quick. I agree with you, Supervisor Kippelshoe. What we ought to have is a new member orientation, because there is so much data here. As elected officials come on board, there is a need for that, and we've talked about it in a couple other situations. So I totally agree about adding it to the future agenda as to what a new member orientation should be. And I think the body could really come up with a great idea. I also am remiss, and I'm sitting around here looking around as I'm the mayor of the community, and I didn't welcome anybody in this room. It's, I'm failed at that issue. But for those of you that are going to float the river today, I certainly highly recommend it. It's a wonderful experience. We had about 75 to 100 volunteers prior to our salmon festival clean out the river, get debris out and gone. Sadly, though, we have a troubled population that comes back and revisits that. So if you see any of that, the city of Oroville is very concerned. In fact, we're now going down a path of getting some special designation for that section of the river. We just had a council meeting about it, and we're talking about possibly requesting it to be a wildlife sanctuary or a city park or whatever goes down that path. So if you see debris, yeah, we know about it. We've been trying to get it cleaned out, but just enjoy your trip. And so far, we've not lost anybody yet on the river, so please don't be the first one.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, I think I actually did oh, yeah, go ahead.
I just had one comment on the topic of the mayor's comments about transition and bringing folks up to speed. And I wanted to mention that I actually asked the DWR staff to meet with our two newest commissioners, Stevens and Boone, who are not here today, but I wanted to share that we did do a meeting with them in person about 3 weeks or so ago to do kind of a 101 from the dam operator perspective. Here's the background on dam safety. Here's the background on flood operations. And I think we found that to be really fruitful. And so would welcome in the next meeting, when we talk about the transition topic, to take any feedback from folks about what you think is appropriate for kind of a 101, or when we have transition, because it's not just the administration, but for any new commissioners, how we should bring them up to speed.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, very good. And I was just going to congratulate myself for finishing just about 15 minutes after the hour. Not as good as Secretary Crowfoot, but I think I did that very quickly, Mr. Mentink. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, can we add that to the action? Yeah, thank you. Okay, well, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for being here.